The morning Sunday cast long shadows across Manhattan's steel and glass canyons as Isabella stood before her bathroom mirror, performing her daily ritual of self-scrutiny. Her trembling fingers traced the familiar landscape of her face. The deep acne scars that marked her dark skin like craters on a distant moon, the uneven texture that no amount of drugstore foundation could smooth away, and the perpetually inflamed spots that seemed to multiply overnight despite her desperate attempts at treatment. At 20 years old, Isabella had already lived a lifetime of rejection. Her reflection stared back at her with eyes that held too much pain for someone so young. Deep brown pools that might have been beautiful if they weren't constantly downcast, avoiding the stares and whispers that followed her everywhere. Just another day, she whispered to herself, the words a mantra that had carried her through countless mornings just like this one. But today was different. Today, she had an interview at Donovan Beauty, the world's leading cosmetics company. The irony wasn't lost on her. The girl who couldn't bear to look at herself in mirrors applying for a job at a beauty company. Her tiny studio apartment, tucked away in one of Manhattan's less fashionable neighborhoods, told the story of someone trying to hide from the world. The mirrors were all covered with scarves, except for the small one in the bathroom she used for her necessary morning routine. Books lined the walls, friends that never judged, never whispered, never turned away in disgust. They were her escape, her education, and her comfort. Isabella pulled on her armor for the day, a well-worn black hoodie that had seen better days, loose-fitting trousers that helped her blend into the background, and flat shoes that wouldn't draw attention. Her thick, unruly hair was pulled back severely from her face, not out of style, but surrender. Every attempt to tame it into fashionable submission had ended in frustration and tears. The subway ride downtown was an exercise in invisibility, a skill Isabella had mastered over years of practice. She kept her head down, hood up, body angled away from other passengers. But even her well-honed techniques couldn't block out all the whispers. "Mom, what's wrong with that lady's face?" A child's voice pierced through her defensive walls. The mother's hushed admonishment and quick shuffling away were all too familiar. Memories flooded unbidden as the train rattled through the darkness beneath the city. High school hallways where students parted like the Red Sea, leaving her a wide berth as if her appearance might be contagious. The senior prom she spent alone in her room. The dress she'd saved up for hanging unworn in her closet after her date saw her without makeup and made up an excuse to cancel. College classes where group projects meant working alone because no one would voluntarily pair with her. The worst memory, the one that still haunted her dreams, was from just 6 months ago. She'd finally gathered the courage to apply for a position at a small marketing firm. The interview had gone well over the phone. Her ideas were good, her portfolio impressive, but the moment she walked into the office, she saw it. That flicker of disgust, quickly masked by professional politeness. The rejection email came within an hour of her leaving the building. As she emerged from the subway station near Donovan Tower, Isabella's hand instinctively went to her bag, checking for the 20th time that her portfolio was still there. Her work was good, she knew that much. 4 years of throwing herself into her marketing studies, of hiding in the library while other students went to parties, had resulted in a GPA that should have had employers fighting over her. Instead, she'd been fighting just to get in the door. The magnitude of Donovan Tower struck her as she approached. 60 stories of gleaming glass and steel reaching into the sky, crowned with the iconic Donovan Beauty logo, a stylized lily in full bloom. How fitting that she, a lily by name but not nature, would be seeking entrance to this temple of beauty. A group of Donovan Beauty employees passed her on their way into the building. They were everything she wasn't. Polished, confident, their makeup perfect and clothes immaculate. Their laughter cut off abruptly as they noticed her, and she caught the familiar exchange of glances, the slight raising of eyebrows, the barely concealed smirks. Can you believe she's coming here? Maybe she's lost. Security should really be more selective about who they let in the lobby. The words drifted back to her, each one a small knife, finding its mark with practiced precision. Isabella clutched her portfolio tighter to her chest, using it as a shield against their judgment. She had faced worse. She would face worse. But today wasn't about theme, it was about proving something to herself. As she approached the revolving doors, she caught her reflection in the polished glass. For a moment, she allowed herself to imagine a different Isabella who didn't have to hide, who could walk into a room without counting the exits, who could meet people's eyes without fearing what she'd see in them. That Isabella existed somewhere. She had to believe that. Taking a deep breath, she squared her shoulders and pushed through the revolving door. The vast lobby of Donovan Tower stretched before her, all marble and chrome, with a massive screen displaying the latest Donovan beauty campaign. Flawless faces smiled down at her, mocking her with their perfection. At the security desk, she stated her name and appointment time, refusing to flinch as the guard did a double take, his eyes scanning her face before dropping quickly to his computer screen. She had earned this interview through her work, through late nights and early mornings, through determination and talent. No amount of stares or whispers could take that away from her. As she waited for the elevator that would take her to the HR department on the 30th floor, Isabella didn't know that this ordinary Tuesday morning would be the last day of her old life. She couldn't have guessed that within hours, she would meet someone who would see past her scars to the person beneath. She had no way of knowing that her greatest transformation wouldn't be the one visible in the mirror, but the one that would take place in her heart. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime, and Isabella stepped inside, clutching her dreams close to her chest, unknowingly moving toward a destiny that would change not only her life, but the lives of countless others who had ever felt invisible in a world obsessed with appearances. Little did she know that this interview would change her life forever, and that the very features she'd spent years trying to hide would become the catalyst for a revolution in how the world defined beauty. Chapter 2. An Unexpected Meeting. The 30th floor of Donovan Tower was eerily quiet compared to the bustling lobby below. Isabella's footsteps echoed against the marble floors as she made her way toward the HR department, 15 minutes early for her interview. The walls were lined with the history of Donovan beauty campaigns from across the decades, showing the evolution of beauty standards, each face more perfect than the last. Her reflection ghosted alongside her in the polished surfaces of the walsa, dark shadow among all this gleaming perfection. She'd spent an hour that morning attempting to apply makeup, trying to make herself presentable for this interview, but her hands had shaken so badly that she'd eventually given up, wiping it all away. Better to be honest about who she was than to present a flawed attempt at fitting in. The elevator at the end of the hall chimed softly, and Isabella instinctively stepped closer to the wall, making herself Smalera habit born from years of trying to avoid attention. The doors opened, and a group of executives emerged, their polished appearances and confident strides marking them as belonging to this world of beauty and privilege. The numbers for the Asian market are promising, but we need something revolutionary for the launch next quarter, one of them was saying, his voice carrying the weight of authority. Isabella pressed herself against the wall, hoping to remain unnoticed as they passed. But fate had other plans. As she tried to step around them, her portfolio caught on a potted plant, sending her stumbling forward just as another figure rounded the corner from an adjoining hallway. The collision was inevitable. Papers flew everywhere, scattering across the polished floor like autumn leaves. Isabella's heart stopped as she realized her carefully prepared portfolio hours of work, her best designs. Her future was now strewn across the floor of Donovan Tower. "I'm so sorry," she gasped, dropping to her knees immediately to gather the scattered papers. Her hands trembled as she reached for the nearest sheet, conscious of the sudden silence in the hallway. The executives had stopped their conversation, and she could feel their stares boring into her. "No harm done," a deep voice replied, and a pair of Italian leather shoes stepped into her field of vision. The voice was warm, carrying an unexpected note of kindness that made her look up despite her instinct to keep her head down. Her breath caught in her throat as she found herself staring into the most striking green eyes she had ever seen. They were the color of emerald seas, clear and penetrating, set in a face she had seen countless times in magazines and business journals. Gabriel Donovan himself, the 35-year-old CEO of Donovan Beauty, but it wasn't the recognition that made her pause. It was his expression, where she was accustomed to seeing disgust, pity, or carefully masked revulsion. She saw something entirely different in his gaze, curiosity, interest, and something else she couldn't quite identify. "You're bleeding," he said softly, reaching into his pocket and producing a pristine white handkerchief. Isabella touched her cheek, realizing she must have caught it on the plant's thorns in her fall. The sting of the small cut was nothing compared to the burning embarrassment she felt. "Too fine," she managed, but Gabriel was already kneeling beside her, offering the handkerchief. The other executives shuffled uncomfortably, clearly unsure whether to stay or go. "Mr. Donovan, we should really continue our discussion about the Asian market," one of them began. "Schedule it for tomorrow," Gabriel replied without taking his eyes off Isabella. His gaze wasn't intrusive or judgmental. Instead, it held a kind of focused intensity that made her feel suddenly visible in a way she had never experienced before. As she reached for the handkerchief, their fingers brushed, and Isabella felt a jolt of electricity run through her. Gabriel's hands were warm, his fingers calloused in places unexpected for a CEO of a beauty empire. He helped her gather the remaining papers, taking time to actually look at each design as he collected them. "These are extraordinary," he said, pausing at a campaign she'd designed for a fictional skincare line. The concept focused on real people with real skin issues, showing the process of healing rather than just the end result. "You understand something that many in this industry have forgotten." Isabella found her voice, though it came out barely above a whisper. "What's that?" "That true beauty isn't about perfection. It's about transformation, about the journey." He stood, offering her his hand. After a moment's hesitation, she took it, allowing him to help her to her feet. "You're here for the junior marketing position?" She nodded, clutching her now disordered portfolio to her chest like a shield. "Cancel the HR interview," he said to his assistant, who had materialized silently beside them. The woman nodded, already tapping on her tablet. Isabella's heart sank. Was this it? Was she being dismissed before she even had a chance? But Gabriel surprised her again. "Come with me to my office instead. I think we have a lot to discuss." He gestured toward the executive elevator at the end of the hall. "Unless you'd rather stick to the original plan." Isabella knew this was a moment that would define her future. She could see it in the way Gabriel waited for her response, in the curious glances from the executives still hovering nearby, in the slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth. He had seen something in her worker, perhaps in her, that had caught his attention. For the first time in years, someone was looking at her and actually seeing her. "No," she said, straightening her shoulders slightly. "I'd like to hear what you have to say." Gabriel's smile broadened, warming his entire face. "Excellent." He placed a gentle hand on her elbow, guiding her toward the elevator. As the doors closed behind them, Isabella caught a glimpse of their reflection in the polished steel. The powerful CEO in his perfectly tailored suit and the girl in the worn hoodie with the scarred face. They made an odd pair, like characters from different stories accidentally sharing the same page. The elevator began its smooth ascent to the top floor, and Isabella felt her world shifting beneath her feet. Something was happening here, something more than a simple job interview. She could feel it in the way Gabriel kept glancing at her designs, in the thoughtful expression on his face, in the electric tension filling the small space. "Miss Lily," he said as the elevator continued its climb, "have you ever considered that sometimes our greatest insecurities can become our greatest strengths?" Before she could answer, the elevator doors opened onto the top floor of Donovan Tower, revealing a world of floor-to-ceiling windows and breathtaking views of Manhattan. Isabella stepped out, still clutching her portfolio, feeling like Alice stepping through the looking glass into a world where anything might be possible. She had no way of knowing that this conversation would change not only her life, but the entire beauty industry. She couldn't have guessed that the man beside her had been searching for someone to revolutionize his company's approach to beauty, and she certainly didn't realize that her unique perspective, born from years of pain and isolation, was exactly what he had been looking for. As she followed Gabriel toward his office, Isabella felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Hope. Not the desperate kind that had sustained her through countless rejections and sideways glances, but something stronger, more substantial. For the first time, someone was seeing past her scars to the person beneath them. The morning sun streamed through the windows, casting long shadows across the floor, and Isabella stepped into a future she could never have imagined when she woke up that morning. Chapter 3. The Proposition. Gabriel's office occupied the entire northeast corner of Donovan Tower's top floor, with windows that seemed to touch the clouds themselves. Afternoon light streamed through the glass, painting golden patterns across the polished surface of his desk, where Isabella's portfolio lay open. For the past 3 hours, they had discussed her designs, her vision for marketing that focused on real transformation, rather than artificial perfection. The conversation had flowed naturally, surprisingly easy despite their vastly different worlds. Gabriel had listened intently as she explained her concepts, asking thoughtful questions that showed he truly understood her perspective. For the first time in her life, Isabella felt truly heard. But then came the moment that changed everything. "Miss Lily," Gabriel said, standing to look out over the Manhattan skyline, his tall frame silhouetted against the late afternoon sun. "What I'm about to propose will sound unconventional, perhaps even shocking. I ask only that you hear me out completely before responding." Isabella's hands tightened in her lap, her heart beginning to race. Was this where he offered her the job? Or worse, where he let her down gently, impressed by her ideas but unwilling to let someone like her represent Donovan Beauty? "The beauty industry is at a crossroads," he continued, turning to face her. "We've spent decades selling perfection, convincing women they need to hide their flaws rather than heal them. It's created a cycle of shame and consumption that's becoming increasingly toxic." He picked up a magazine from his desk, showing her the cover. Another impossibly perfect model, selling another impossible dream. "When I took over this company from my father 5 years ago, I promised myself I would change things. But change requires more than just new products or clever marketing. It requires authenticity, a real story, a true transformation." His green eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "That's where you come in." Isabella shifted uncomfortably in her chair. "I don't understand." Gabriel set the magazine down and walked around his desk, leaning against it directly in front of her. "I want you to marry me." The words hung in the air between them, impossible and overwhelming. Isabella felt the room spin slightly, her fingers gripping the arms of her chair. "You want to marry me?" she repeated incredulously, certain she must have misheard. "Yes," he replied simply. "A real marriage, legally binding, but with very specific terms and purposes." Isabella's mind raced, trying to make sense of what she was hearing. "But why?" Gabriel's expression softened slightly. "Because you represent everything I want Donovan Beauty to become. You're intelligent, creative, and most importantly, real. Your marketing concepts show a deep understanding of what true transformation means. But more than that, you have the potential to be a living testament to what we're trying to achieve." He reached for a thick folder on his desk and handed it to her. Inside were photographs and documents detailing a revolutionary new skincare line. Years of research and development, clinical trials showing unprecedented results. "We're about to launch the most advanced skincare system ever developed," he explained. "Not just surface treatments, but products that work at a cellular level to promote genuine healing. But we need more than just before and after photos. We need a story that will inspire people, that will show them real transformation is possible." "So I'm just an experiment to you?" Isabella's voice trembled with a mix of anger and hurt. "A before photo waiting to happen?" "No," he replied softly, and something in his tone made her look up at him. "You're someone who deserves to show the world who you truly are. The question is, are you brave enough to take that journey?" He moved back behind his desk, giving her space to process. The arrangement would be mutually beneficial. You would have access to the best dermatologists, treatments, and resources in the world. You would be trained in every aspect of the beauty industry, from skincare to fashion to public speaking. You would have a real position within the company, using your marketing skills to help shape our new direction. "And in return," she asked, her voice barely above a whisper, "in return, you would document your journey, share your story, become the face of a new kind of beauty, one that's about transformation and healing rather than perfection. The marriage would give you immediate credibility within the industry and protect both of us from any accusations of exploitation." Isabella stood abruptly, needing to move, to think. She walked to the windows, looking out over the city that had always made her feel so small, so invisible. "This is insane," she said finally. "You don't even know me." "I know enough," Gabriel replied quietly. "I know you're talented. I know you understand something about beauty that most people never grasp. And I know that you have the potential to change not just yourself, but the entire industry." She turned to face him, arms wrapped protectively around herself. "And what happens when you're done with me? When you've gotten your perfect transformation story?" Gabriel's expression grew serious. The contract would be for 2 years, with clear terms protecting both our interests. You would receive a significant settlement, ensuring your financial independence, regardless of the outcome. But more importantly, you would have transformed your life on your own terms. He stood and walked over to join her at the window, careful to maintain a respectful distance. I'm not asking you to pretend to be something you're not. I'm offering you the opportunity to become everything you could be, while helping others do the same. Isabella stared out at the city, her mind whirling with possibilities and fears. The practical part of her knew this was madness. You don't marry a stranger for a business arrangement, no matter how lucrative. But another part of her, a part that had been silent for so long, whispered of hope and change and possibility. I need time to think, she said finally. Gabriel nodded, reaching into his desk to retrieve a thick envelope. Of course. Here's the formal proposal, including all terms and conditions. Take it home, review it carefully. Talk to a lawyer if you wish. I'll cover the costs. He handed her a business card. This is my private number. Call me when you've made your decision. Whatever it may be. As Isabella gathered her portfolio with trembling hands, Gabriel added softly, Miss Lily, whatever you decide, know that your work today has already changed how I see the future of this company. She nodded, unable to trust her voice, and made her way to the door. Just as she reached it, Gabriel spoke again. One more thing. Why did you apply to Donovan Beauty? The truth. Isabella paused, her hand on the door handle. Because, she said quietly, sometimes the people who most need to believe in beauty are the ones who've never been allowed to feel beautiful. With those words hanging in the air between them, she stepped out of the office and into a future full of impossible possibilities. The envelope felt heavy in her hands, weighted with potential and promise. As the elevator descended, Isabella caught her reflection in the polished doors and, for the first time in years, allowed herself to imagine who she might become. Little did she know that this decision would not only transform her life, but would ripple out to touch countless others who had ever felt invisible in a world obsessed with surface perfection. The real question wasn't whether she was brave enough to take this journey. It was whether the world was ready for the truth about beauty that she and Gabriel would uncover together. Chapter 4. The Beginning of Change. The private ceremony took place in Gabriel's penthouse 3 days after Isabella signed the contract. No guests, no flowers, just a civil officiant, the necessary witnesses from Gabriel's legal team, and a view of Manhattan stretching out behind them through floor-to-ceiling windows. Isabella wore a simple cream-colored dress that Gabriel's personal shopper had selected, her hands trembling slightly as she signed the marriage certificate. Mrs. Donovan, Gabriel said quietly after the officiant left, testing the sound of it. He stood beside her at the windows, both of them watching the sunset paint the city in shades of gold and pink. Are you ready to begin? Isabella touched the simple platinum band on her finger. Practical, elegant, nothing flashy that might draw attention, just like their arrangement. I think so, she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. The next morning marked the beginning of what Gabriel called Phase 1 of her transformation. A team of world-renowned dermatologists and skincare specialists had taken over one of the private treatment suites in the Donovan Beauty Research Facility. The space looked more like a high-tech medical center than a beauty salon, filled with equipment Isabella had never seen before. Dr. Emily Lynn, the lead dermatologist, spent 2 hours just examining Isabella's skin, documenting every scar and imperfection with a specialized camera system. Your skin has been through a lot, she said kindly, reviewing the 3D images, but the damage isn't as deep as you might think. The new treatment protocols we've developed could show significant improvement within the first few months. How bad is it really? Isabella swallowed hard, trying to find her voice. Doctor. Lynn's eyes softened. It's not about bad or good. It's about healing. Your skin has been fighting a battle without the right weapons. We're going to change that. The treatment plan they outlined was intensive. Daily procedures combining advanced laser therapy, specialized chemical treatments, and the application of Donovan Beauty's revolutionary new skincare line. Each product had been customized specifically for her skin's needs, developed in the company's most advanced laboratories. The key ingredient, Dr. Lynn explained, showing her a serum that seemed to shimmer with an inner light, is a compound we've developed that actually promotes cellular regeneration while reducing inflammation. It's completely different from anything currently on the market. As the team began the first treatment, Isabella caught sight of herself in one of the mirrors, barefaced, vulnerable, about to begin a journey she couldn't fully comprehend. To her surprise, Gabriel appeared in the doorway. "May I?" he asked, and after receiving nods from both Isabella and Dr. Lin, he took a seat near the treatment chair. "I hope you don't mind. I like to be involved in all our major projects." "Is that what I am?" Isabella asked, wincing slightly as Dr. Lin began the first laser treatment. "A project?" Gabriel's expression grew thoughtful. "You're the future of this company," he replied. "More importantly, you're my wife. Even if the circumstances are unusual, I want to be here for this." Over the next 4 hours, Isabella underwent the first round of treatments. The procedures were uncomfortable at times, but not painful. Thanks to the advanced techniques being used, throughout it all, Gabriel remained, sometimes working quietly on his tablet, sometimes engaging her in conversation to distract her from the treatments. "Tell me about your family," he said during a break between procedures. Isabella hesitated, then decided there was no point in hiding. "There's not much to tell. My parents died in a car accident when I was 16. I lived with my aunt until I turned 18, then put myself through college with scholarships and part-time jobs." "I'm sorry," Gabriel said softly, and something in his tone made her look at him. "About your parents. That must have been incredibly difficult." "It was a long time ago," she replied automatically, the response worn smooth from years of use. "Time doesn't always heal everything," he said, his green eyes meeting hers with unexpected understanding. "Sometimes it just teaches us how to carry the weight better." Before she could respond, Dr. Lin returned to begin the next round of treatments, but something had shifted in the atmosphere between them, a small crack in the professional facade they'd both been maintaining. The day ended with Dr. Lin applying the final layer of specialized serums to Isabella's skin. "Remember," she instructed, "no regular skincare products. Use only what we've provided, exactly as directed. And the protective barrier cream is essential. Your skin will be especially sensitive for the next few days." As they prepared to leave the facility, Gabriel surprised her again. "Would you join me for dinner?" he asked. "There's something I'd like to discuss." The private elevator took them to a different floor of the building, opening into a stunning restaurant Isabella hadn't known existed. "The Donovan Executive Dining Room," Gabriel explained, leading her to a quiet corner table with views of the city lights beginning to twinkle in the early evening darkness. "I thought you might prefer this to being seen in public just yet." The consideration in that gesture touched her unexpectedly. As they settled into their seats, Isabella realized this was the first time they'd been truly alone since the wedding ceremony that morning. "How are you feeling?" Gabriel asked as the waiter poured water into crystal glasses. "Overwhelmed," Isabella admitted, finding it easier to be honest in the intimate lighting of the restaurant. "Everything's happening so fast." "We can slow things down if you need to," he offered immediately. "The timeline isn't set in stone." She shook her head. "No, it's not that. It's just, I've spent so long trying to be invisible, and now you're going to be seen," Gabriel finished softly. "Really seen. Perhaps for the first time." "Isn't that what you wanted?" he asked, a hint of challenge in his voice. "Your living testament to transformation?" Gabriel was quiet for a moment, considering her words. "What I want," he said finally, "is to change how the world thinks about beauty. But I'm beginning to realize that this journey might transform more than just your appearance or my company's image." Their food arrived perfectly prepared, but simple dishes that somehow reflected Gabriel's understanding of her desire to avoid anything too elaborate or overwhelming. As they ate, he began to outline the next phases of their plan. "The skincare treatments will continue daily for the first month," he explained. "Meanwhile, you'll begin working with our marketing team, using your ideas to help shape the campaign for the new product line. We'll also start your training in public speaking, media relations, and business etiquette." "You really have thought of everything," Isabella murmured. "I try to," he acknowledged, "but I'm sure there will be surprises along the way. There always are when real transformation is involved." As the evening drew to a close, they stood together at the windows, looking out over the city that would soon know their names and their story, or at least the version of it they would choose to tell. "Gabriel," Isabella said quietly, using his first name for the first time. "Why did you really choose me? There must have been other candidates. Other women with skin problems who could have told this story." He turned to look at her, his expression serious in the reflection of the glass. "Because when I saw your marketing concepts, I recognized something in Thema, deep understanding that beauty isn't about reaching perfection, it's about embracing transformation. And when I met you," he paused, choosing his words carefully, "when I met you, I saw someone who had never been given the chance to believe in her own beauty, yet still believed in beauty itself. That's rare, and it's precisely what this company needs." Isabella absorbed his words, feeling their weight settle into her heart alongside all her hopes and fears about what was to come. As they parted ways that evening, she to the luxury apartment that was now hers, he to his penthouse 20 floors above him, either of them could have predicted how this carefully arranged business transaction would begin to shift and change, transforming them both in ways neither had anticipated. The journey of change had begun, and like all true transformations, it would prove to be both more challenging and more rewarding than either of them had imagined. Chapter 5. Breaking Down Walls. 3 weeks into their arrangement, Isabella stood before the mirror in her bathroom, carefully applying the morning treatment serums Dr. Lin had prescribed. Her fingers traced the subtle changes already beginning to show in her skin, areas where the angry redness had begun to fade, where the texture was becoming smoother. The transformation was barely noticeable to anyone else yet, but she could feel it happening, cell by cell, day by day. The quiet of her morning routine was interrupted by her phone buzzing with a message from Gabriel. "Dinner party tonight. 7 p.m. Key investors and board members will be present." Isabella's heart rate immediately spiked. They hadn't discussed public appearances yet. She'd been working remotely with the marketing team, developing concepts from the privacy of her new office while undergoing treatments. The thought of facing Gabriel's elite social circle made her palms sweat. Before she could spiral further into anxiety, another message appeared. "You don't have to come if you're not ready, but I think you are." His quiet confidence in her was still something she was getting used to. Over the past weeks, they'd fallen into an unexpected rhythm. Every morning, he would check in on her treatments. Every evening, they would review the day's progress over dinner in the executive dining room. Their conversations gradually extended beyond business to more personal topics. She was learning to read him, the slight crease between his brows when he was concerned, the way his eyes lit up when discussing the future of the company, the gentle tone he used only when they were alone. But she still couldn't quite figure out where the business arrangement ended and something else began. Taking a deep breath, she typed back, "I'll be there." Within an hour, a team of stylists arrived at her apartment, sent by Gabriel. They brought with them a rack of designer dresses and an arsenal of beauty products. The lead stylist, a sharp-eyed woman named Sophia, studied Isabella with professional interest. "Mr. Donovan was very specific about the look we're going for," Sophia said, sorting through the dresses. "Elegant, but understated. We want to enhance, not overshadow." As the team worked, Isabella caught fragments of their whispered conversations. "The treatments are actually working. Did you see her before photos? Incredible progress." Still, to present her tonight, the comments stung, but not as much as they once would have. 3 weeks of daily treatments and Gabriel's quiet support had begun to build something new in her, not quite confidence, but perhaps its foundation. The dress they chose was midnight blue, simple in cut but exquisite in detail. The makeup artist worked with the special products Dr. Lin had approved, creating a look that enhanced without irritating her healing skin. When they finished, Sophia stepped back with a satisfied nod. "You're ready, Mrs. Donovan." The name still felt foreign on her tongue, but her reflection in the mirror was even stranger. Elegant, polished, almost beautiful. Almost. Gabriel was waiting in the lobby of their building, his tuxedo impeccable as always. When he saw her, something flickered in his eye: surprise, appreciation, something more. "You look stunning," he said simply, offering his arm. The drive to the penthouse was quiet, filled with a tension Isabella couldn't quite name. As they ascended in the private elevator, Gabriel finally spoke. "There will be questions tonight," he said softly. "About us, about the company's direction. Some of them won't be kind." "I know," she replied. "Remember, you're my wife and the future of Donovan Beauty. You don't need to explain or justify yourself to anyone." The elevator doors opened directly into their penthouse, now transformed for the evening's event. Dozens of New York's elite were already mingling, champagne glasses tinkling like wind chimes above the murmur of conversation. The moment they entered, Isabella felt the shift in the room, the subtle turning of heads, the whispered comments behind manicured hands. Gabriel's hand pressed gently against her lower back, guiding her forward. The first hour was a blur of introductions and small talk. Isabella stayed close to Gabriel, drawing strength from his presence as they navigated the social battlefield together. Some guests were politely curious. Others barely concealed their judgment behind social smiles. Then came the moment that changed everything. "Really, Gabriel?" The voice cut through the ambient chatter, slightly too loud to be accidental. Margaret Voss, head of their largest competing beauty company, stood near the window with a group of board members. "She's your latest charity case? You can't possibly parade her around as the face of Donovan Beauty." The room didn't quite fall silent, but the conversation definitely dimmed. Isabella felt all eyes turned toward them, waiting to see how Gabriel would respond. But before he could, something inside her shifted. All the years of hiding, of shame, of letting others define her worth something snapped. With a gentle squeeze to Gabriel's arm, she stepped forward. "Miss Voss," she said, her voice clear and steady, "I've studied your company's latest quarterly reports. Your market share in the therapeutic skincare segment has dropped 15% in the past year. Perhaps if you spent more time innovating and less time judging others, those numbers might improve." A shocked silence fell over the gathered crowd. Margaret's face flushed red, but Isabella wasn't finished. "Donovan Beauty is moving in a new direction, one that embraces real transformation and authentic beauty. If that threatens you, perhaps you should ask yourself why." She felt Gabriel step up beside her, his presence solid and supportive. "Well said, my dear," he murmured, just loud enough for those nearby to hear. Then, louder, "Shall we tell them about the new line?" For the next hour, they presented their vision together. Isabella spoke about real beauty, about transformation that went beyond skin deep. She showed early concepts for the marketing campaign, her voice growing stronger as she shared her passion for changing how people saw themselves. The room's energy shifted. Where there had been skepticism, now there was interest. Where there had been judgment, now there was curiosity. Even some of the board members who had been most opposed to Gabriel's new direction began to nod thoughtfully. Later that night, after the last guest had left, Isabella stood on the penthouse balcony, looking out over the city. She heard Gabriel's footsteps behind her but didn't turn. "Their words only have power if you give it to them," he said softly, coming to stand beside her. "I see your strength, your kindness, your brilliant mind. When will you see it too?" She turned to look at him then. Really look at him. His tie was loosened, his hair slightly mussed from running his fingers through its small imperfections that made him seem more real, more human. "Why did you really choose me, Gabriel?" she asked again, needing to know the truth. He was quiet for a long moment, considering her question. "Because when I look at you, I see someone who could change not just herself, but the whole world's perception of beauty. Someone who understands that true transformation isn't about becoming someone else, it's about becoming more fully yourself." Their eyes met in the darkness, and something shifted between them, something that hadn't been part of their carefully crafted arrangement. Before either of them could acknowledge it, Gabriel's phone buzzed with an urgent business matter. As Isabella made her way back to her apartment that night, she realized that more than her skin was changing, the walls she had built around her heart were beginning to crack, letting in light and danger she hadn't expected. In her bathroom mirror, she studied her reflection, not just her slowly healing skin, but her eyes, which seemed brighter somehow, stronger. The evening had marked a turning point, though she wasn't quite sure toward what. One thing was certain. She was no longer the same person who had walked into Donovan Tower that first day. The question was, who was she becoming? And more importantly, What was happening between her and the man who had set this transformation in motion? The answers to those questions would have to wait for another day. For now, she had won her first battle in the world of beauty and power. It wouldn't be her last, but at least now she knew she could fight and win. Chapter 6. The Awakening. 3 months into their marriage, Isabella stood before the floor-to-ceiling mirror in her dressing room, hardly recognizing the woman who stared back at her. Dr. Lynn's revolutionary treatments had worked better than anyone had anticipated. The angry redness that had plagued her skin for years had faded to a soft, even tone. The deep scarring was smoothing out, replaced by new, healthy tissue. Her once unruly hair now fell in soft waves, thanks to the specialized care routine Sophia had designed for her. But it wasn't just her appearance that had changed. She stood differently, now shoulders back, chin lifted, no longer trying to hide from the world. The transformation went far deeper than skin. A knock at her door interrupted her reflection. "Come in," she called, expecting Sophia or one of the other staff members. Instead, Gabriel stepped into the room, his presence immediately filling the space. He'd loosened his tie after a long day of meetings, and there was something endearingly human about the slight dishevelment of his usually perfect appearance. "I thought I might find you here," he said, his eyes meeting hers in the mirror. "Are you ready for tomorrow?" Tomorrow, her first official presentation to the Donovan Beauty marketing team, not as Gabriel's wife or a transformation project, but as their new creative director. The promotion had been announced last week, causing quite a stir in the industry. "I think so," she replied, turning to face him. "I've been reviewing the presentation all day." "Show me," he said, settling into one of the plush chairs by the window. It had become their routine. He would find her in the evening, and they would discuss ideas, plans, the future of the company. But lately, these conversations had begun to feel different, charged with something neither of them acknowledged. Isabella pulled up the presentation on her tablet. But before she could begin, Gabriel held up his hand. "Not here," he said. "Let's go up to the rooftop garden. It's a beautiful evening, and you've been cooped up inside all day." The rooftop garden was Gabriel's private retreat, a stunning oasis 20 stories above Manhattan, filled with carefully tended plants and comfortable seating areas. As they settled onto one of the cushioned benches, the setting sun painted the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. "Now," he said, "show me your vision." For the next hour, Isabella shared her ideas for revolutionizing Donovan Beauty's marketing approach. Her concept was bold. Instead of traditional before and after photos, she wanted to document real people's transformation journeys, showing the ups and downs, the emotional as well as physical changes. "We'll call it Beauty and Becoming," she explained, her voice growing more animated as she shared her passion. "Each campaign will follow someone's genuine transformation journey, not just with our products, but in their lives. We'll show that true beauty isn't about reaching some perfect end state. It's about embracing the process of change itself." Gabriel listened intently, asking thoughtful questions that helped her refine her ideas further. As she spoke, the last rays of sunlight caught her face, and she noticed him watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "What is it?" she asked, suddenly self-conscious. "You're smiling more," he said softly. "It lights up the whole world around you." The simple observation caught her off guard. In the growing darkness, she felt brave enough to ask, "Do you remember what you said to me that first day, about how sometimes our greatest insecurities can become our greatest strengths?" "I remember everything about that day," he replied, his voice low and intimate in the gathering dusk. "I didn't believe you then. But now." She gestured to the presentation on her tablet. "Everything in here comes from my experience, from understanding what it truly means to transform. If I hadn't lived through what I did, I couldn't create this campaign with such authenticity." Gabriel was quiet for a moment, then said, "When I first proposed this arrangement, I thought I knew exactly what would happen. I had it all planned out, the treatments, the marketing campaign, the public story we would tell. But you've surprised me at every turn." "Is that a good thing?" she asked, her heart beating faster. "It's a wonderful thing," he replied. "You're not just changing yourself, Isabella. You're changing this entire company, changing me." The admission hung in the air between them, heavy with implications neither of them was ready to face. In the 3 months since their marriage of convenience, something had shifted between them, something that wasn't part of the original agreement. The moment was broken by Gabriel's phone buzzing with an urgent message. He checked it and sighed. "The Tokyo office needs me on a call in 10 minutes. "Go," she said, understanding the demands of his position. "I should get some rest anyway. Tomorrow's a big day." As they rode the elevator down together, Gabriel suddenly asked, "Have dinner with me tomorrow night, after your presentation. Not in the executive dining room, somewhere else, somewhere normal people go." Isabella felt her pulse quicken. "Like a date?" "Like two people getting to know each other properly," he replied, his green eyes holding hers, outside of boardrooms and business arrangements. The elevator reached her floor, and she stepped out, turning to face him. "I'd like that," she said softly. That night, as she lay in bed reviewing her presentation one last time, Isabella realized something that both thrilled and terrified her. She was falling in love with her husband, not the powerful CEO who had offered her a business arrangement, but the man who listened to her ideas with genuine interest, who saw her strength when she felt weak, who was somehow becoming the best friend she'd ever had. The next morning, she arrived at the Donovan Beauty offices early, wanting time to prepare. The conference room slowly filled with marketing executives, many of whom had initially been skeptical of her appointment. But as she began her presentation, something magical happened. She spoke with passion and authority about real transformation, about the power of authenticity in marketing. She shared concepts that challenged everything the beauty industry had been doing for decades. And as she spoke, she could see the room changing. Skepticism turning to interest, doubt transforming into excitement. "The beauty industry has spent too long selling perfection," she concluded. "It's time we started selling truth. Time we showed that real beauty isn't about reaching some impossible ideal, it's about becoming more fully yourself." The room erupted in applause, and as she looked around at the excited faces, she caught sight of Gabriel standing in the doorway. The pride in his eyes made her heart skip a beat. Later, as the team excitedly discussed implementation plans, Gabriel pulled her aside. "That wasn't just a presentation," he said quietly. "That was a revolution." She smiled up at him, feeling stronger and more confident than she ever had before. "Ready to change the world with you," he replied, his hand finding hers and squeezing it gently. "Always." That evening marked a turning point not just in Isabella's career or in Donovan Beauty's direction, but in her understanding of herself. She was no longer the girl who had walked into Donovan Tower 3 months ago, desperate for a chance. She was becoming someone new, someone stronger, someone who could not only transform herself, but help others do the same. And somewhere along the way, her carefully arranged marriage of convenience had begun to feel like something else, entirely, something real, something precious, something that terrified and excited her in equal measure. As she prepared for their dinner that night, Isabella caught her reflection in the mirror one last time. Her physical transformation was remarkable. Yes, but it was the light in her eyes, the confidence in her smile, that truly showed how far she had come. She was becoming the woman she was always meant to be, and somehow, unexpectedly, she wasn't walking that path alone anymore. Chapter 7. Learning to Fly. 6 months into their marriage, Isabella sat in her newly renovated office at Donovan Beauty, reviewing the final cuts of their revolutionary Beauty and Becoming campaign. The wall of windows behind her desk offered a stunning view of Manhattan, but her attention was focused on the screens before her, where real women shared their transformation stories with raw honesty. Her own transformation had exceeded everyone's expectations. Dr. Lynn's treatments had worked miracles, but it was Isabella's inner metamorphosis that truly amazed people. Gone was the girl who hid behind her hair. In her place was a woman who commanded attention not because of her appearance, but because of her presence. A knock at her door drew her attention. "Come in," she called, expecting one of her team members with the latest marketing reports. Instead, it was Gabriel, looking slightly harried, a rare sight for someone who usually maintained such perfect composure. "Do you have a minute?" he asked, closing the door behind him. "For my husband?" "Always," she replied with a smile, the word husband still carrying a thrill she tried to ignore. "What's wrong?" He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she'd come to recognize as a sign of genuine concern. The board meeting didn't go as planned. Margaret Voss has been buying up shares through shell companies. She's making a play for control of Donovan Beauty. Isabella felt her heart skip a beat. Margaret Voss, the same woman who had tried to humiliate her at their first dinner party, whose own beauty empire was built on selling impossible standards of perfection. How close is she? Too close, Gabriel admitted, sinking into one of the chairs across from her desk. She's convinced several key investors that our new direction is too risky. They're worried that focusing on real transformation instead of quick fixes will hurt our bottom line. Isabella stood and walked around her desk, perching on its edge near Gabriel. Show me the numbers. For the next hour, they pored over financial reports and market analyses. Isabella's mind raced, connecting dots others might have missed. Finally, she looked up with a gleam in her eye that Gabriel had come to recognize. "You have an idea," he said. It wasn't a question. "What if we moved up the launch of the Beauty and Becoming campaign?" she suggested, excitement building in her voice. "Not just the skincare line, but the whole movement. We've been documenting real women's transformation journeys for months. Let's release them all at once, a digital tsunami of authentic stories that will drown out Margaret's narrative." Gabriel leaned forward, intrigued. "The production team said they need at least another month." "We don't need perfect production values," Isabella interrupted. "In fact, raw authenticity would work better." She hesitated for a moment, then pressed on. "And I think we should include my story too." "Isabella," Gabriel said softly, concern evident in his voice, "you don't have to do that. The agreement never required you to share your personal journey." She met his eyes steadily. "I want to. Not because of our agreement, but because it's the right thing to do. How can I ask other women to be brave if I'm not willing to do the same?" The intensity of his gaze made her breath catch. They'd been dancing around something for weeks now, their business arrangements slowly evolving into something neither of them had anticipated. The lines between professional and personal were becoming increasingly blurred. "Let me show you something," she said, breaking the moment before it became too charged. She pulled up her personal documentary footage on the screen-saw, honest videos documenting every step of her transformation journey, not just the physical changes, but the emotional ones too. There she was on day 1, barely able to look at the camera. Week 3, crying after the dinner party confrontation. Month 4, giving her first public speech about real beauty. Through it all, Gabriel appeared in the background supporting, encouraging, believing in her even when she didn't believe in herself. "This isn't just my story," she said quietly. "It's ours. It's about how true transformation happens when someone believes in you enough to help you believe in yourself." Gabriel stood and moved closer, his presence sending electricity through the air between them. "Is that what this is about? Believing in yourself?" "No," she replied, her heart pounding. "It's about how you merrily saw me when no one else did. How you trusted me with your company's future when you barely knew me. How you've become—" She trailed off, unsure how to finish that sentence without revealing too much. "How I've become what?" he prompted softly. "The most important person in my life," she whispered, the truth of it frightening in its intensity. The air between them crackled with unspoken words and unfulfilled possibilities. Gabriel took another step closer, close enough that she could see the flecks of darker green in his eyes. "Isabella," he began, but was interrupted by his phone buzzing urgently. The board needed him immediately. The moment broke, reality rushing back in. They were still in the office, still had a company to save, still had roles to play. "Go," she said, straightening up. "I'll start working on the campaign launch. We can meet tonight to review everything." He nodded but paused at the door. "Have dinner with me tonight. Not in the office, not as CEO and creative director, just us." "Just us," she agreed, her heart fluttering. After he left, Isabella threw herself into work, channeling her emotional turmoil into creative energy. She called an emergency meeting with her team, outlining her vision for the accelerated campaign launch. They worked through lunch, fueled by passion and purpose. By evening, they had a solid plan in place. The campaign would launch in waves first, a series of teaser videos showing glimpses of real transformation stories. Then, the full documentary series, including Isabella's journey. Finally, the product launch, backed by scientific data and authentic testimonials. As she gathered her things to leave, she caught her reflection in the window. The setting sun painted her skin in golden light, highlighting how far she'd come. But it wasn't just her appearance that had changed. She was stronger now, more confident, more alive. The elevator ride down was a blur of thoughts and emotions. She was about to have dinner with Gabriel, not as his business partner or his arranged wife, but as herself. Just as she was about to step out of the elevator, she received a text from him. "Meet me on the roof instead." The rooftop garden was transformed. Hundreds of tiny lights twinkled among the plants, and a small table was set for two in their favorite corner. Gabriel stood at the railing, looking out over the city. "What's all this?" she asked, joining him. "I thought we deserved something special," he replied, turning to face her. "Today, you reminded me why I chose you, not just for your potential, but for your courage to be authentically yourself." As they sat down to dinner, the conversation flowed naturally, touching on everything and nothing. They talked about their childhoods, their dreams, their fears. For the first time, they were truly getting to know each other as people, not roles. "Do you remember what you asked me that first day?" Gabriel said as they lingered over dessert. "About whether you were just an experiment to me?" "I remember," she replied softly. "I need you to know something." He continued, reaching across the table to take her hand. "Somewhere between our business arrangement and now, you've become much more than that, much more than I ever expected." Isabella felt tears prick at her eyes. "Gabriel, let me finish," he said gently. "You're not just changing yourself or this company, you're changing me. And I think," he paused, choosing his words carefully, "I think I'm falling in love with my wife." The admission hung in the air between them, beautiful and terrifying in its honesty. Isabella's heart thundered in her chest as she realized that somewhere along this journey of transformation, she had fallen in love too with the powerful CEO who had offered her a chance at change, but with the man who had shown her what real beauty meant. Under the stars, surrounded by twinkling lights and the soft sounds of the city below, they began to write a new chapter in their story, one that had nothing to do with business arrangements or beauty campaigns, and everything to do with two people discovering that sometimes the greatest transformations happen in the heart. Chapter 8. The Storm. The morning after Gabriel's rooftop confession, Isabella woke to her phone buzzing incessantly. Her social media notifications were exploding, her email inbox overflowing. Someone had leaked photos from her past, harsh, unflattering images from her college days, along with cruel comments about her transformation. Donovan Beauty CEO's secret shame, the truth about his transformed wife, sources reveal, Isabella Lilly's shocking before photos, beauty industry insiders. Question authenticity of Donovan transformation. Her hands trembled as she scrolled through the headlines. The timing wasn't coincidental. Margaret Voss's fingerprints were all over this attack. Just as they were preparing to launch their Beauty and Becoming campaign, their opponents had struck first, trying to turn her story from inspiration to scandal. Her phone rang. "Gabriel, have you seen it?" she asked without preamble. "I'm coming up," he replied, his voice tight with controlled anger. Minutes later, he was at her door. The moment she opened it, he pulled her into his arms, holding her close. "Are you okay?" She buried her face in his chest for a moment, drawing strength from his presence. "I will be. But this could hurt the company, Gabriel." "The campaign?" He pulled back to look at her, his green eyes fierce. "The campaign is exactly why they're doing this. They're scared, Isabella. Margaret knows that if we succeed in changing the conversation about beauty, her entire business model crumbles." They moved to her living room, where her team had already started sending crisis management strategies. But as Isabella read through the mounting coverage, something shifted inside her. "No," she said suddenly, sitting up straighter. "No what?" Gabriel asked, looking up from his phone. "No to crisis management. No to damage control. No to letting them control the narrative." She stood and began pacing, energy coursing through her. "They want to share my before photos? Fine. Let's share all of them, every step of the journey, every painful moment, every small victory, every real and raw transformation." Gabriel watched her with growing understanding. "You want to accelerate the campaign launch. Not just accelerate it, revolutionize it. Right now, today. We don't need polished videos or perfect production. We need truth. She turned to face him, her eyes shining with determination. Call an emergency board meeting. I have an idea. 2 hours later, Isabella stood before the Donovan Beauty Board of Directors, her head held high. She'd chosen to dress simply no makeup beyond Dr. Lynn's treatment products, her hair natural, wearing one of her old sweaters from before her transformation. Ladies and gentlemen, she began, her voice strong and clear. Our competitors think they can shame us, by revealing my past, but they've just handed us the greatest gift possible, the opportunity to be completely, radically honest. She clicked through a presentation of her own journey, not the polished version they'd planned to release, but the raw, real documentation of every step, the painful treatments, the tears, the small victories, the setbacks. Alongside these images, she shared statistics about the beauty industry's impact on women's self-esteem, mental health, and financial well-being. For too long, the beauty industry has profited from shame, she continued. We've sold women the idea that they need to hide, to transform overnight, to be ashamed of their journey. Today, we have the chance to change that narrative completely. She outlined her plan, an immediate, multi-platform launch that would turn their attackers' weapons into their strength. They would release everything, her full journey, the stories of other women they'd been documenting, the science behind their products, and most importantly, the truth about the beauty industry's manipulation of women's insecurities. The boardroom erupted in heated discussion. Some directors were horrified at the idea of such radical transparency. Others saw the potential for something revolutionary. Through it all, Gabriel remained quietly supportive, letting her fight this battle herself. As the debate raged on, Isabella's phone buzzed with a message. One of her college bullies had posted new photos, along with vicious comments about how she had bought her way into beauty. Without hesitation, she walked to the center of the boardroom and held up her phone. "This just posted," she announced. Silencing the room, "And it's exactly why we need to do this, not just for me, but for every person who has ever felt they needed to hide who they are or where they came from." She turned to face the room, her voice filled with passion. "We're not just a beauty company. We're not just selling products. We're offering people the chance to be authentic, to transform on their own terms, to be proud of their journey instead of ashamed of their starting point." A slow clap started from the corner. Margaret Voss stood in the doorway, a smirk on her perfectly made-up face. "Bravo, Mrs. Donovan. Quite the performance. But do you really think people want authenticity? They want perfection. They want magic. They want to believe they can become someone else entirely." Isabella met her gosses steadily. "You're right," she said, surprising everyone. "People want magic. But real magic isn't in pretending to be someone else, it's in becoming more fully yourself." She walked to the center of the room, addressing Margaret directly. "You tried to shame me by exposing my past. Instead, you've given me the perfect platform to show what real transformation looks like. It isn't about erasing who you were. It's about embracing who you're becoming." Margaret's smirk faltered slightly. "The board will never approve such a risky strategy." "Our investors already have," Gabriel interrupted, standing to join Isabella. "The vote just came in through our digital voting system. The board approves Isabella's proposal by a margin of 9-3. The room erupted in chaos, Margaret storming out, board members congratulating them or hurrying to manage the fallout, PR teams scrambling to implement the new strategy. Through it all, Gabriel kept his hand at the small of Isabella's back, a quiet source of support and strength. Later that night, after hours of emergency meetings and launch preparations, they found themselves back in their rooftop garden. The city lights twinkled below them like earthbound stars, and a cool breeze carried away the last tension of the day. "Are you sure about this?" Gabriel asked softly. "Once we start, there's no going back. Every part of your journey will be public." Isabella turned to face him, reaching up to touch his cheek gently. "I've never been more sure of anything. You taught me that real beauty isn't about hiding who you are, it's about having the courage to show your truth to the world." He caught her hand in his, pressing a kiss to her palm. "When did you become so wise?" Around the same time I fell in love with my husband, she replied softly, not the CEO who offered me a business arrangement, but the man who saw me, really saw me when I couldn't even see myself. Under the stars, they shared a kiss that had nothing to do with business arrangements or beauty campaigns. It was about two people who had found something real and precious in the midst of their carefully planned transformation. The storm of public opinion would rage on, their competitors would continue to attack. But together, they had found strength in authenticity, power in vulnerability, and love in the most unexpected of arrangements. Tomorrow, they would launch their revolution in beauty. Tonight, they celebrated their own personal revolution, the transformation of a business arrangement into something real, lasting, and beautiful in its own right. Chapter 9. Unveiling the Truth. The launch of the Beauty and Becoming campaign sent shockwaves through the beauty industry. Isabella's unvarnished story, released across all major social media platforms simultaneously, became a viral sensation overnight. Women around the world began sharing their own transformation stories, creating a movement that went far beyond skincare and beauty products. But amidst the public triumph, Isabella made a discovery that would change everything. Late one evening, while reviewing company documents for the upcoming shareholders meeting, she found a series of declined acquisition offers, massive deals that would have made Gabriel billions. Every single one had been rejected for the same reason. They wanted to replace her as the face of the company. The revelation hit her like a physical blow. These weren't recent offers. Some dated back months, to when she was still just beginning her transformation. Gabriel had been protecting her position, believing in their vision long before there was any proof it would work. Lost in thought, she didn't hear him enter her office until he spoke. "I thought I might find you still here," he said softly. "It's past midnight." She looked up at him, the document still open on her screen. "Why didn't you tell me about these?" Gabriel's expression shifted as he recognized what she was looking at. He moved further into the office, closing the door behind him. "They weren't relevant." "Weren't relevant?" she repeated incredulously. "Gabriel, these offers the amount of money you turned down." "It wasn't about the money," he interrupted, coming to stand beside her desk. "It never was." "Then what was it about?" He was quiet for a moment, looking out at the city lights twinkling beyond her office windows. "Do you remember the day we met, when you showed me your marketing concepts?" She nodded, the memory still vivid in her mind. There was something in those designs, something raw and honest and real. "You understood something about beauty that I'd been trying to articulate my entire career." He turned to face her. "The offers came with conditions. They wanted to water down our message, to turn your transformation into just another before and after story. I couldn't let that happen." "Why?" she pressed, needing to understand. "Why risk so much for me?" His answer changed everything. "Because somewhere between our business arrangement and now, I fell in love with you, not the person I could make you into, but the person you've always been." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with truth and possibility. Isabella stood slowly, her heart pounding. "When?" she whispered. "When did you know?" "I think part of me knew that first day," he admitted, "but I tried to fight it. You were supposed to be a business partner, a spokesperson. I had everything planned out so carefully." He laughed softly. "But you have a way of destroying carefully laid plans." She moved around her desk to stand before him. "I'm still trying to understand. You could have had everything, billions of dollars, global expansion." "I already have everything I want," he interrupted, reaching out to cup her face gently. "A partner who shares my vision, a company that's actually making a difference in people's lives, and a wife I fall more in love with every day." Tears spilled down Isabella's cheeks as the full weight of his words hit her. All this time, she'd been focused on her external transformation, but the real change had been happening in their hearts. "There's something else you should see," Gabriel said, pulling out his phone. He showed her an email that had arrived earlier that day, an invitation to speak at the Global Beauty Industry Summit, not as a guest, but as the keynote speaker. "They want you to share our vision for the future of beauty." "Not may you." Isabella stared at the screen in disbelief. The summit was the most prestigious event in the beauty industry, where the biggest names in cosmetics and skincare gathered to shape the future of the market. "But I'm not." "You're exactly who they need to hear from," Gabriel interrupted. you're changing the entire conversation about beauty and transformation. You're making people question everything they thought they knew about what beauty means." She looked up at him, seeing the pride and love shining in his eyes. "I couldn't have done any of this without you." "That's where you're wrong," he said softly. "Everything you've accomplished, the campaign, the movement you've started, the way you've handled every challenge, that's all you. I just gave you a platform. You're the one who turned it into a revolution." Moving to the window, Isabella looked out at the city below. Somewhere out there, thousands of women were sharing their stories, inspired by her courage to be authentic. The movement she'd started was growing beyond anything she could have imagined. "You know, Margaret Voss will be at the summit," she said thoughtfully. "She'll try to discredit me again." Gabriel came to stand behind her, his hands resting lightly on her shoulders. "Probably. Are you afraid?" She turned to face him, a smile playing at her lips. "No, not anymore. Because I finally understand what you saw in me that first day, what you've been trying to teach me all along. Real beauty isn't about being perfect. It's about being brave enough to be yourself." He pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "I'm so proud of you," he whispered. "And a little terrified of you," he added with a laugh. "You're becoming a force of nature." "Good thing you married me then," she teased. But there was a deeper truth in her words. Their arranged marriage had become something real and precious, built on a foundation of mutual respect, shared vision, and deep love. As they stood together, looking out over the city, Isabella felt a profound sense of peace. Tomorrow would bring new challenges: the summit preparation, Margaret's inevitable attacks, the continuing expansion of their movement. But tonight, in this moment, she was exactly where she was meant to be. "Gabriel," she said softly. "I love you too, not the CEO who offered me a chance at transformation, but the man who taught me that the most beautiful thing I could be is myself." He turned her in his arms, his green eyes intense as they met hers. "Then I suppose we should make this marriage real in every way," he said softly, before lowering his lips to hers in a kiss that spoke of love, promise, and the beautiful future they would build together. The city lights twinkled below them like earthbound stars, witnesses to a transformation far more profound than any skincare routine could achieve. They had set out to change the beauty industry, but in the process, they had found something far more precious. The kind of love that transforms not just appearances, but hearts and souls. Chapter 10. The Real Transformation. The auditorium at Mount Sinai Hospital was packed to capacity. Isabella stood at the podium, her heart full as she looked out at the sea of faces before her, hundreds of young people struggling with skin conditions, self-image issues, and the crushing weight of society's beauty standards. The launch of the Donovan Foundation for Real Beauty had drawn media attention from around the world, but it was these faces that mattered most to her. 3 years ago, she began, her voice strong and clear. "I couldn't look in a mirror without crying. I couldn't walk down the street without hearing whispers. I couldn't imagine a future where I would ever feel beautiful." She paused, letting her words sink in. "Today, I stand before you not because I achieved some perfect standard of beauty, but because I learned what real beauty means." The presentation screens behind her showed photos from her journey, not just the physical transformation, but moments that captured her growing confidence, her strengthening spirit. Among them was a candid shot of her and Gabriel in their rooftop garden, both laughing at something unheard, their love for each other evident in their expressions. "The treatments helped," she continued, gesturing to her clear skin. "The products we developed at Donovan Beauty are revolutionary, and they work, but the real transformation happened here." She touched her heart. "It happened when I stopped trying to become someone else and started becoming more fully myself." In the front row, a young girl raised her hand, her face bearing the marks of severe acne, much like Isabella's had. "Did the treatments make you feel beautiful, or was it something else?" Isabella smiled softly, stepping out from behind the podium to sit on its edge, creating a more intimate connection with her audience. "The treatments helped me feel confident, but real beauty came from learning to love myself, scars and all, and from having people in my life who saw my beauty even when I couldn't see it myself." Her eyes met Gabriel's in the audience. He gave her a subtle nod, encouraging her to share the new initiative they'd been working on. "That's why today, I'm proud to announce that the Donovan Foundation isn't just about providing treatments and support. We're launching a mentorship program, pairing young people with industry professionals who understand that beauty comes in all forms. We're creating support groups, funding research into both physical and emotional healing, and most importantly, we're changing the conversation about what beauty means. The announcement was met with enthusiastic applause, but Isabella wasn't finished. She gestured to Dr. Lin, who stepped forward with a young woman named Zara, one of their first foundation recipients. Sara came to us 6 months ago, Isabella explained. Like me, she had struggled with severe skin issues. Like me, she had faced bullying and isolation. But unlike me, she didn't have access to expensive treatments or cutting-edge products. She smiled at Zara encouragingly. Would you like to tell them what happened next? Zara stepped up to the microphone, her transformed skin glowing with health. The foundation didn't just provide me with treatments, she said, her voice trembling slightly. They gave me a community, support, hope. She turned to Isabella. Mrs. Donovan taught me that my story wasn't about hiding who I was, but about becoming who I was meant to be. As Zara shared her story, Isabella felt tears prick at her eyes. This was why she had agreed to make her transformation public, not for fame or fortune, but for moments like this, for the chance to help others find their own path to self-acceptance and real beauty. The presentation continued with more success stories, more announcements about the Foundation's initiatives, and finally, a surprise that even Gabriel didn't know about. Before we close today, Isabella said, returning to the podium, I want to share something personal, something that makes today even more special. She touched her stomach gently, a soft smile playing at her lips. In about 7 months, our foundation family will be growing by one more member. My husband and I are expecting our first child. The auditorium erupted in cheers and congratulations. Gabriel's face was a picture of shocked joy as he made his way to the stage, taking the stairs 2 at a time to reach her. In front of hundreds of witnesses, he pulled her into his arms, kissing her with all the love and pride he felt. When they finally broke apart, both laughing and crying, Isabella turned back to the audience. This journey has taught me that real transformation isn't about becoming someone else. It's about becoming more fully yourself. It's about finding your strength, your voice, your truth. And sometimes, it's about finding love in the most unexpected places. After the presentation, as they mingled with foundation recipients and their families, a reporter asked Isabella how it felt to have completed her transformation. She laughed softly. That's the beautiful thing about real transformation. It's never complete. Every day brings new challenges, new opportunities for growth, new chances to redefine what beauty means. I'm not the same person I was when I walked into Donovan Tower that first day, but I'm not finished becoming who I am, either. Later that evening, in their rooftop garden, Gabriel held her close as they watched the sunset, his hand resting protectively over her stomach, where their greatest adventure yet was just beginning. When did you find out? He asked softly. Last week, she replied, leaning back against his chest. I wanted to surprise you. You succeeded. Every day, he murmured, pressing a kiss to her temple. When I made that business proposal 2 years ago, I thought I knew exactly what would happen. I had every step planned out. And instead, you turned my whole world upside down, she finished, smiling. You didn't just transform yourself, you transformed me, this company, the entire industry. He turned her in his arms to face him. You transformed my understanding of what love can be. Isabella reached up to touch his face gently. We transformed each other, she corrected, and now we get to help transform the world, one person at a time. Below them, the city hummed with life and possibility. The Donovan Beauty headquarters glowed in the gathering dusk, its windows reflecting the golden light of sunset. Inside those walls, teams were working on new products, new campaigns, new ways to spread their message of authentic beauty. But up here, in their private paradise, none of that mattered. What mattered was the love they had found, the family they were building, and the knowledge that true beauty comes not from perfection, but from the courage to be authentically yourself. Isabella rested her head on Gabriel's shoulder, feeling their child flutter beneath her heart. The journey that had begun with a business proposal had become something far more profound, A love story, a revolution, and proof that the most beautiful transformations are the ones that start in the heart. Chapter 11. Love's True Face. On a quiet Sunday morning, 7.5 months into her pregnancy, Isabella sat in their penthouse's sunlit living room, looking through old photographs. The contrast between then and now was striking, but not for the reasons most would think. The physical changes were obvious. Yes, her skin now glowed with health. Her presence radiated confidence, but it was the light in her eyes that showed the true transformation. "I barely smiled in these," she observed as Gabriel joined her on the couch, setting down 2 mugs of herbal tea. "I was so afraid all the time." "And now?" he asked, settling beside her and placing a gentle hand on her rounded belly. She turned to him, tears shimmering in her eyes. "Now I know that real love sees beyond the surface. You taught me that." The baby kicked against Gabriel's palm, making them both laugh. These quiet moments had become precious as they prepared for both the upcoming Global Beauty Summit and the arrival of their child, 2 life-changing events approaching simultaneously. "I found something yesterday," Gabriel said, reaching for an old leather portfolio he'd brought with him. "I think you should see it." Inside was a series of sketches, rough concepts for beauty campaigns dating back years before they'd met. To Isabella's surprise, they all centered around the idea of real transformation, authentic beauty, and genuine change. "I'd been trying to move the company in this direction for years," he explained, showing her the rejected concepts. "But something was missing. I couldn't quite capture what real transformation meant." He looked at her tenderly, his eyes warm with emotion. "Und Sie mit hier?" Isabella traced the old sketches with her fingers, her heart swelling with realization. "Why didn't you ever tell me about these?" "Because I wanted you to know that your ideas, your vision, were entirely your own. You weren't fulfilling my dream. You were bringing your own to life. I just had the good fortune to see it." She leaned into him, their child nestled between them, a quiet testament to their shared journey. "Did you ever imagine this?" she asked softly. "When you made that business proposal, did you ever think we'd end up here?" "Never," Gabriel admitted with a laugh. "I had everything planned so carefully. The treatments, the marketing campaign, the product launch. I never planned on falling in love with my wife." Their quiet moment was interrupted by a call from their summit preparation team. The event was just days away, and Margaret Voss's camp had been spreading rumors, trying to undermine their presentation. "Let them try," Isabella said firmly, her hand resting protectively over her belly. "We've got something they can never duplicate. Truth." Later that day, they visited the Donovan Foundation's new headquarters. The building hummed with energy as mentorship programs were in session, support groups met, and research teams collaborated on new treatments. In one room, a group of teenagers worked with confidence coaches, learning to embrace their unique features. In another, dermatologists consulted with families who couldn't afford traditional treatment options. As they walked through the halls, people stopped to greet them not with the fearful deference once shown to the powerful CEO and his wife, but with genuine warmth. These weren't just employees or clients, they were part of a movement. In the research wing, Dr. Lynn was excitedly sharing the results of their latest clinical trials. "The new formulation is showing unprecedented results in scar reduction," she explained, pulling up before and after images. "But more importantly, look at these psychological assessment scores. The data showed significant improvements in self-esteem and social confidence among trial participants. It's not just about changing how they look, Doctor," Lynn said, beaming. "It's about changing how they feel about themselves." "Exactly as it should be," Isabella replied, exchanging a proud look with Gabriel. That evening, they hosted a dinner for the Foundation's board of directors in their penthouse. As Isabella looked around the table, she marveled at how different this was from that first terrible dinner party, where Margaret Voss had tried to humiliate her. Now, she sat at the head of the table beside Gabriel, confident and glowing, leading a discussion about the Foundation's future initiatives. "We're not just changing lives one person at a time," she explained, her passion evident in every word. "We're changing the entire conversation about beauty. And next week at the summit, we're taking that message global." After the guests left, Isabella and Gabriel retreated to their rooftop garden. The space had been redesigned to be more family-friendly, with comfortable seating areas and safety features already installed for their coming child. "I've been thinking about names," Isabella said as they settled onto their favorite bench. "What do you think about Lily?" Gabriel smiled softly. "After your family name?" "No," she replied, touching her belly gently. "After the flower that blooms most beautifully, after weathering the storm, after transformation and resilience, and the power of becoming." He pulled her closer, pressing a kiss to her temple. "It's perfect. Just like her mother." "I'm not perfect," she protested automatically. "No," he agreed. "You're real, which is so much better. You're strong and vulnerable, confident and humble. Beautiful in ways that have nothing to do with your appearance." He placed his hand over hers on her belly. "And you're going to teach our daughter what real beauty means." As the stars appeared above them, Isabella thought about the upcoming summit. Margaret Voss would be there with her perfect face and practiced smile, ready to defend the old way of doing things. But for the first time, Isabella felt no fear, no doubt. "You know what I realized?" she said, looking up at the night sky. "Everything that happened, all the pain, the rejection, the transformation, it led me exactly where I needed to be. To you. To this foundation. To this moment." Gabriel was quiet for a moment, then said, "Do you remember what you told me that first day, about why you applied to Donovan Beauty?" She smiled at the memory. "I said that sometimes the people who most need to believe in beauty are the ones who've never been allowed to feel beautiful. And now you're helping thousands of people believe in their own beauty." He turned her face to his gently. "I fall more in love with you every day. You know that? Even with my crazy pregnancy cravings and summit preparation stress. Especially then," he laughed. "Because that's real, love seeing someone completely, truly, and loving every part of them." They spent the rest of the evening planning for the summit, for the baby, for their future. The old photographs lay forgotten on the coffee table downstairs, a reminder of how far they'd come. But it wasn't the physical transformation captured in those images that mattered most. It was the journey their hearts had taken, from a business arrangement to deep and lasting love. As Isabella drifted off to sleep that night, her head on Gabriel's chest, she thought about the speech she would give at the summit. She would tell their story, yes, but not just the story of her physical transformation. She would tell the story of how real love transforms us all, how true beauty comes from being brave enough to be yourself, and how sometimes the greatest changes happen when we stop trying to become someone else and start becoming more fully who we are. The baby stirred inside her, a reminder that their story was still unfolding. New chapters waited to be written, new transformations waited to begin. But now, they would face them together, stronger for having found each other, better for having learned what real beauty truly means. Chapter 12. The Final Unveiling. The grand ballroom of Donovan Tower buzzed with anticipation. It was the launch of Donovan Beauty's new True Beauty line, and everyone who was anyone in the beauty industry was present. Isabella stood at the podium, radiant in a golden gown, her once scarred skin now glowing with health. But it was her eyes that captured everyone's attention. They shone with confidence and purpose. "Many of you knew me before," she began, her voice strong and clear. "You saw my scars, my flaws, my imperfections. Some of you whispered behind my back. Some laughed to my face. Tonight, you see a different person standing before you, not because of the treatments or the makeup, but because I finally see myself clearly." Tears began to fall in the audience as she continued. "True beauty isn't about perfect skin or the right features. It's about the light that shines from within when you know your worth. Every product in our new line is designed not just to enhance your appearance, but to remind you of the beauty you already possess." She turned to Gabriel, who watched her with pride and love. "My husband didn't just give me a new face, he gave me the courage to face myself. And that is the greatest transformation of all." As the audience rose in a standing ovation, many wiping away tears, Isabella felt at peace. Her journey hadn't been about becoming beautiful, it had been about discovering the beauty that had been there all along. In the back of the room, she spotted that young girl who had once asked her about true beauty. The girl was smiling now, standing tall, no longer trying to hide her acne-marked face. And in that moment, Isabella knew that her transformation wasn't just about her anymore, it was about everyone who had ever felt invisible, everyone who had ever been told they weren't enough. She had become more than a success story. She had become a beacon of hope. Epilogue: The Beauty of Forever. 5 years later, the sunset painted the Manhattan skyline in shades of gold and pink as Isabella stood in the rooftop garden of Donovan Tower, watching her daughter Lily chase butterflies among the flowers. At 4 years old, Lily was a perfect blend of her parents Gabriel's striking green eyes and Isabella's warm smile, with a spirit all her own. "Mommy, look!" Lily called out, pointing to a monarch butterfly that had landed on a nearby lily bush. "It transformed, just like in my book." Isabella smiled, remembering the children's book they'd published through the Donovan Foundation, The Beautiful Butterfly, a story about transformation and self-acceptance that had become a worldwide bestseller. Like everything else in their lives, it had started as one small idea and blossomed into something magnificent. "The board meeting is finishing up." Gabriel's voice came from behind her as he stepped out onto the rooftop. Lily squealed with delight and ran to her father, who scooped her up in his arms. "And guess what? The Global Beauty Summit wants us to do the keynote again this year, both of us." "Both of us?" Lily asked innocently. "Can I come too?" Isabella and Gabriel exchanged a knowing look. Their daughter had become the unofficial mascot of the Donovan Foundation, charming everyone she met with her natural confidence and kind heart. She had never known a world where beauty meant conformity or where worth was measured by appearance. "Actually, sweetheart," Isabella said, joining her family, "this year's summit is very special. We're launching the Lily Initiative." The Lily Initiative was their most ambitious project yet, a global program providing comprehensive support to young people struggling with self-image issues. It wasn't just about skincare or treatment, it was about mental health, education, and building a community of acceptance. As if on cue, the elevator doors opened, and Dr. Lynn stepped out with Zara, now the Foundation's youngest director at 25. They were followed by a small group of teens, part of the Foundation's latest mentorship program. "Mrs. Donovan," one of the girls said shyly, "we wanted to show you our project before the official presentation tomorrow." The teens had created a documentary series called Real Beauty Stories, featuring interviews with people from all walks of life, sharing their journeys of self-discovery and acceptance. It was exactly the kind of initiative that made the Foundation special, empowering young people to become agents of change themselves. As they watched the preview on a tablet, Lily settled in her mother's lap, occasionally pointing at the screen and asking questions. Isabella felt tears well up in her eyes as she watched these young people share their stories with the same courage and authenticity she had found in herself years ago. "You know," Gabriel said quietly after the teens had left and Lily had fallen asleep in her father's arms, "Margaret Voss announced her retirement today. She's selling her company." "To who?" Isabella asked, though she already suspected the answer. "To her daughter Charlotte, who, if you remember, was one of our Foundation's first success stories." He smiled. "She wants to rebrand the company to focus on authentic beauty and real transformation. She's asked for our guidance." Isabella laughed softly, careful not to wake Lily. Life has a way of coming full circle, doesn't it? They stood together at the railing, looking out over the city they had changed. Donovan Beauty had become more than just a company, it was a movement. Their products still led the industry in innovation and effectiveness, but their real legacy was in the lives they had transformed, the conversations they had changed, the world they had helped reshape. "Do you ever think about that first day?" Gabriel asked, shifting Lily gently in his arms. "When you came for that job interview?" "Every day," Isabella replied, leaning into him. "I was so scared, so certain that no one would ever see past my appearance. And then you looked at me, really looked at me and saw something I couldn't even see in myself." "I saw you," he said simply, "just like I see you now. And you're more beautiful to me every day." Lily stirred slightly, mumbling something about butterflies in her sleep. They looked down at their daughter, this perfect embodiment of love and transformation, and felt their hearts swell with gratitude. "We should head home," Isabella said softly. "Big day tomorrow." As they walked toward the elevator, they passed the wall of photos that chronicled their journey. The original before pictures, the wedding day, the summit speech, Lily's birth, the Foundation's opening, countless moments of triumph and tenderness, captured in time. But it was the newest edition that caught Isabella's eye, a candid shot taken just last week. In it, she was sitting with a group of teenage girls, all of them laughing naturally, none of them trying to hide their faces or their scars or their authentic selves. Lily was there too, perched on her mother's lap, her little face glowing with the kind of confidence that comes from never having learned to doubt your own worth. "That's my favorite picture," Lily said sleepily from her father's arms. "Everyone looks so happy." "That's because they are happy, sweetheart," Isabella replied. "They're happy being exactly who they are." As they rode the elevator down together, Isabella caught their reflection in the polished doors. A family built on love, trust, and the courage to be authentic. Their story had started as a business arrangement, transformed into a love story, and blossomed into a movement that had changed countless lives. But perhaps the most beautiful part wasn't in the grand gestures or public triumphs. It was in these quiet moments, in the way Gabriel still looked at her like she was the most beautiful woman in the world, in the way Lily grew up knowing that true beauty comes from within, in the thousands of lives they touched every day through their work. They had transformed an industry, yes, but more importantly, they had transformed hearts, including their own. And that was a beauty that would last forever. As they stepped out into the evening air, Lily now fully asleep against her father's shoulder, Isabella felt a profound sense of peace. Their journey hadn't ended with that summit speech 5 years ago. It was still unfolding, still transforming, still becoming more beautiful with each passing day. Because that's what real beauty is. Not a destination, but a journey. Not perfection, but authenticity. Not a mask we wear, but the truth we dare to show the world. And as Gabriel wrapped his free arm around her waist, pulling her close as they walked toward their waiting car, Isabella knew that this was just the beginning of their most beautiful chapter yet.